What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
Yo, what is going on? Welcome back. It is week 5, cashing points, best time of the week. Welcome back Friday night. Love doing this show with you guys. 10-game slate. Few buys this week. Fun slate. A couple of really good games, especially in the early window. I like this slate a lot. Mark, Harlow, what's up, man?
What's going on, man?
You having a good week? How many shows are you up to during the week now?
I don't know, man. I lost count.
You lost count?
Yeah. All the days kind of just bleed together, and I just we work and we grind, baby.
All right. I got you. just for clarity, is this the second mark that's been rolled out of the assembly line that's come through?
No, we're on version like 7, dude.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, that's the better version. What's up, Jake? How you doing, man?
How's it going, man? Excited to be here on my mom's slightly spotty internet due to the hurricane. So hopefully I don't drop off too much, but always hyped for another week of ball.
Yes. Yeah, you sound good and look good so far. So shout out to everybody that's been obviously affected by the hurricane. We've got Joe, Bonnie, you, Jake, all you guys have been kind of displaced and been nomads this week. So yeah, feel for you guys, feel for anybody especially in the Western North Carolina area. Let's win some money this week. Let's do it. We'll get started here with Commanders and Browns. Commanders 3.5 point favorites, 43.5 is the total. No Nick Chubb, no surprise. They opened up his practice window, but I don't think anybody really expected him to play. Jake, I'll go to you first, man. A couple of pretty solid values in this game, especially Jerome Ford, I think just projects as a strong value. Really good spot. Obviously, Washington giving up a ton of fantasy points to receivers, but they're also a really bad front seven. What say you about Jerome Ford and this game?
Yeah, so Ford is obviously a pretty strong play this week. The price is right. The matchup's really strong. It's also interesting that he's played on 77% of Cleveland snaps when trailing, 53% with the lead, 77% carry share when trailing, only 47% with the lead. And, the spread certainly suggests Washington should have the lead in this game. So we're anticipating a pretty good amount of playing time for Ford. My only major concern is that Deontay Foreman has outsnapped him, I believe, 6-2 inside the 10 over the last 2 weeks. So, you could quibble about the touchdown equity, but overall he's a pretty strong value and, probably about tied to me as a run back in Jaden Daniels stacks. And, obviously Amari Cooper is a fantastic play. If you want to look at other Browns, it's just Deshaun Watson needs to show up. The matchup's right. The usage has been incredible for Cooper, but his catchable target rate isn't great. I feel good about both guys, mostly as run backs. I'm a bit surprised to see Deshaun Watson get steamed so much as a play this week. Hilo, I know you were mentioning in our projections chat, you thought he looked better in week 4. I reviewed the film. I mean, I definitely line up with you. I think the zip's better. The mechanics were a little better, but he's still just way too eager to run. He's not pushing the ball downfield enough. Well, how do you feel about him and the Browns this week?
Yeah. So to me, looking at him on tape, we could talk about this. I don't want to spend so much time on it. But from just a snapshot, he looked not back, but he looks a lot better as far as his throwing mechanics, his footwork. He needs to keep his eyes downfield. He's looking at first pressure. If he senses anything, he's first looking to run. That's not going to cut it. But when we're looking at just his throwing mechanics, just a snapshot week 4 versus earlier in the season, it was much better. He's got better arm strength. His throwing motion is back to what we kind of want to see. He was drawing all kinds of letters. We were not seeing a D or a C during his throwing motion the first 3 weeks. But last week it looked a lot better. So I'm a little bit more hopeful, particularly considering kind of how this game shapes up. Amari Cooper, like you mentioned, he's 6th in the league in air yard share. He has a strong ADOT, 12.7 ADOT. He is running a full route tree. We know Amari Cooper is, he's a stud wide receiver. Now it's kind of time for him to start acting like it, right? I mean, he leads the league in drops. He's tied with Malik Neighbors for drop rate. There's all these negatives, and his big drop last week bounced off his chest straight into the air for an interception. So like, I'm just looking for this team to clean some stuff up. That starts with coaching. That obviously has a lot to do with Deshaun Watson, but if they are going to ever clean it up, this is as good a spot as any. So I really like Amari Cooper. Had that big game 2 weeks ago, very nearly had a big game last week. Deshaun Watson and Cooper did not connect on a deep ball that was a walk-in touchdown. And then they had the 82-yard touchdown called back, and then they dropped pass that led to an interception. So the opportunity is there for Amari Cooper. I really, really like him. Jerome Ford kind of feels like a why. Like, we have so many good running back plays on the slate. Like, Jerome Ford has a season high of 12 carries. Yeah, two of those games, he saw 7 targets to go with that. But still, this is not a volume back, and he is highly reliant on the game environment, the flow of the game working out, like you mentioned. So to me, I like Deshaun Watson. I like him more if David Njoku comes back, because that should free up Amari to run more perimeter downfield type stuff, which is a direct correlation to like a splash play from Amari directly benefits Watson. So yeah, that's kind of how I'm seeing this spot.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, Jane Daniels going to pick up massive ownership. He's kind of a tricky play this week, Mark. Obviously, Browns with Myles Garrett get a ton of pressure. Commanders last 2 weeks, especially the last 2 weeks, have not really faced a good front seven. Prices come up, but I still think he's a strong technical value just based on projection. But yeah, we got to talk through Jaden Daniels, because this is a little bit of a trickier spot for him, especially considering the last 2 weeks, just defenses he faced have been sieves.
Yeah, I mean, on DK, he's the cash game quarterback. It's a little bit trickier on FanDuel because he's priced at 100 less than Lamar Jackson. But the savings is nice on DK to give you a solid floor. And the reason I say a solid floor is because he has a 40% scramble rate this season when pressured. He had a 30% scramble rate under pressure in college. And he has a 17% scramble rate when kept clean. So those, now considering his opponent in a Browns defense that is second in the league in pressure rate, he has the opportunity to bounce back up to 12, 16 carries, somewhere in that range, which is where he was at the first 3 weeks of the season. As opposed to typically we're going to see him get 4 or 5 design carries, and then the rest is kind of up to scrambles. So against a team where he's not expected to be put under pressure, we're probably going to see him around the 8 to 10 carry range. But he has some upside for legitimate carries here in this spot.
Yeah, you were all over this in week 1 when they played Tampa, and Tampa blitzes a ton. Obviously, you were saying the same thing. It's like they're going to blitz him, he's going to scramble a ton, and he had his best rushing game of the year. So yeah, I like that call, and I think that makes a ton of sense in this spot. I do have a ton of respect for this Browns defense, though. His bringbacks are, stack options are just so obvious with McLaurin at this point, just getting all of the air yards, all of the first reads in this offense. Starting to get some downfield stuff too, and they just have a rotation at receiver after that. We'll keep it moving here, boys. We'll go to Ravens and Bengals. Ravens getting 2.5 points. Excuse me. Totals 49. Fun game, Mark. Really fun game. You were just talking through Lamar a second ago. Paying up this week, obviously. I think it's Lamar week. We could talk through Josh Allen, but I think just with this offense right now and what it is and how run heavy they are, and especially considering the opponent and how weak Bengals front seven has been, it just seems so obvious that Ravens going to come back and just slam a negative 15% P-row down Bengals throats here, Mark. Talk through Ravens and what you're seeing this week in this game.
Yeah, besides this game, like having the highest game total on the slate, it has the highest chance to turn into something like you cannot win a GPP without. These two teams play obviously 2 times a year. The last 3 seasons in their 6 matchups, they have gone over 51 points 4 times. The only times they didn't were in the 2022 season. The first matchup, the Bengals were without T. Higgins. The second matchup was in week 18 of 2022. The Ravens were in a meaningless game. They sat Lamar Jackson. I think it was Josh Johnson that was at quarterback. They sat Mark Andrews. And I think a lot of that is due to Zach Taylor, because Zach Taylor is not a coach. He comes from the McVay tree. He's not a coach that goes looking out to maximize scoring on every possession. He's typically going to let the game come to him, and then he'll adjust and react. Very much like Sean McVay, very much like Matt LaFleur. So that usually requires them to be pushed to open up their offense. The lone exception that I've kind of seen is when they play the Ravens, because the Ravens just kind of have their number. They know how to attack them, and the Bengals have been largely unable to stop that. So there is upside here. And we talk about like how a game environment gets to a place where like you had to have it, like a 70-point game total. We're starting to see those now pop up in the league as offenses start figuring stuff out. How does that happen? It doesn't happen through game planning. It doesn't happen through scheme. It doesn't happen through that. It happens through individual performances. So does this game have that at its disposal? Yeah, like Jamar Chase is here. Lamar Jackson is here. Derrick Henry is here, can rip off a 80-yarder as he proved he still is capable of. So yeah, this game has clear paths, but that all of that said, like it's really expensive to get access to this game.
Yeah.
So I think that's being reflected in the ownership numbers because we don't have a lot of value on the slate. We don't know where to go to save salary. So people are like, yeah, that's the top environment, but like I don't have the salary to get there. So I really like attacking this game environment. So like Lamar Jackson plus Derrick Henry plus Jamar Chase, or Joe Burrow plus Jamar Chase plus, I mean, pick your poison, Eric All or Andre Yoshivas. Kind of throw in whoever you want. So I'm going to be mixing matching this game environment, and I probably won't have a ton of exposure to it outside of like game environment bets, outside of probably Derrick Henry.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, this game has so many so many outs. There's just so many ways this game can go here, Jake. Last 2 weeks, Derrick Henry's been off the main slate. He's now $1K more expensive than he was the last time he was on main. Well, I guess he was on main in that Dallas game 2 weeks ago. Take that back, but still, 7,800. Like Mark was saying, I mean, it's an expensive game, but I mean, Henry just has such a massive ceiling, especially as a favorite, especially against this soft defense here.
Yeah, absolutely. The Bengals are way down there, bottom 3 in missed tackles and yards allowed after contact. They've given up the seventh most rushing yards per game. And as you hinted, Graham, I mean, Baltimore's pass rate over expectation has been negative 16% over the last 2 weeks. They've really come around to just giving Derrick Henry the ball every single play.
Baby.
You know, he should feast. Yeah, exactly. You should feast in this sort of game environment here. Another note I had for the Ravens, and this is from our boy Ryan Heath. Zay Flowers, 70% boost to his yards per out run against single high. Bengals have a pretty strong lean towards single high look, so I certainly don't mind mixing in some Flowers if you do want to play a lot of Lamar. I loved Hilo's take on this just being a fantastic game to attack. You really aren't seeing much ownership here. I mean, to me, going back to Derrick Henry real quick, I think he's a pretty comparable play to Jordan Mason, who seems to be the consensus RB1 on the slate. And I'm not seeing a huge difference. Yeah, I'm really not seeing much of a difference when you analyze these two. Overall, on the Cincinnati side, my only other note here, I think, Hilo largely nailed it, is you really want to attack game stacks, but Joe Burrow has by far the best pass blocking grade in our offensive defensive line matchups tool. And he's just lights out when he's kept clean. Same thing with Jamar Chase when Burrow's kept clean. So I think those are really, really encouraging notes. And when you look at the ownership, I mean, this game just looks so awesome.
Yeah, I kind of want to go all in on Burrow doubles with this ownership. He's kind of in a weird spot in terms of pricing. Purdy is going to be chalk, but he's like right in the middle. I just kind of want to go all in. I think Hilo, you mentioned Eric Hall. He's earned 2 more targets on like 20 fewer routes than Mike Gesicki over the last few weeks. He's looking like a legitimate, like he's going to break out at some point middle or late in the season. Looks like a really good young player for them. 2,700 tight end sucks again this week. So if you wanted to punt and play Burrow and play all in those stacks, I think that makes a ton of sense. I don't think I have much else from this game. Love this game though. Love this next game too. Bills and Texans. It's basically been a pick 'em all week. 47.5 is the total. Jake, I'll kick it to you first, man. I mean, I still think Nico Collins is like underpriced by probably 1K. He's been in the low 7s, now kind of getting into the mid 7s on DK. He's going to be mega chalk, but they're getting Tank Dell back this week. I don't really think it matters. Like matchups just have not mattered for this guy. What do you think about Nico at probably going to push 20%? And this game, man, a lot of angles in this one too.
Yeah, this is definitely an interesting game. So, as you touched on, the Bills are not a good on paper matchup, but Nico Collins has 100 more receiving yards than the next closest player. And he's just been so awesome this year
Bananas.
that I'm really not
Yeah.
particularly worried about it. He's a guy I want to mix in throughout my lineups. I am a bit concerned about this matchup for CJ Stroud. He struggled massively against Minnesota. They run league high amounts of too high. The Bills run the fourth highest rate of too high. And overall, they've been a pretty solid defense here. I think things get a little trickier with Tank Dell, so I'm largely off Stroud in this spot. I'm curious what you guys think about Cam Akers. I really don't see a strong argument for him. The prices come up, and they get down by a couple touchdowns. He's just totally scripted out. Hilo, do you have anything to add on the Houston side of this game?
Yeah, I think the hardest thing for me with this game environment is that both defenses do really well against what the opposing offense does really well. The Bills are, especially now without Khalil Shakir, are likely going to want to run everything around their run game and then build from that through play action, through getting Josh Allen out of the pocket, through the unique things that they can do. But they're under Joe Brady. They're not looking to push the pace. They're not looking to push the ball downfield. Their downfield options are Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Mac Hollins. Like, they just don't have the ability to really attack downfield at an efficient rate. And then you look at the Texans, and Bobby Slowick he's not turned the corner that I was hoping he would coming into the season.
No.
I shit on his offensive play calling tendencies all last season, and they're not any better. This team's consistently finding themselves in long down and distance to go. Their first down rush rate is extremely high. They tried to still do that with Cam Akers over the last two games. It's like, this ain't it. So now one thing you do not want to do against the Bills is get into long down and distance situations, because they're just going to go nickel and dime, and they're just going to flood the middle of the field, and they're going to dare you to try and beat them deep. That could happen because Stroud is awesome and Nico Collins is awesome. But that's kind of Stroud is having to overcome a lot instead of being put in the best position to succeed. The route structures and the fundamental structure of the offense is great when they're passing, but they're just consistently finding themselves in long down and distance situations. And you really can't, if you did not have Stroud, you would not be successful. So I don't know, man. I think there's more paths to failure from this game environment, particularly considering all the pieces are priced up. That said, the one spot where I think there might be some value in this game on a slate where we don't have a ton of value is Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel, he's been blocked for snap rates by Khalil Shakir. So now with his direct block out of the way, I expect him to play 65, 70% of the offensive snaps out of the slot. We've had Coach speak this week talking up the fact that they want to get Curtis Samuel more involved. So it's all kind of aligning for me. And at 4,200 on DK, he opens up a lot.
I want to jump back to your point about Texans, because I think it's an important one. And you were right last year about them, and just them not opening this offense up. They're not a good well coached team, man. They're really not.
It's not.
I was just thinking in my head. I was like, man, I've watched all the Texans this year. I wonder if they lead the league in false starts. They do by 3. This offensive line, I mean, that's a sign of a poorly coached team. Mm-hmm. I will say their P-row has come up a little bit, but at the same time, I mean, 2 weeks ago against the Vikings, how many times did we see Cam Akers on a first down run when they were getting just absolutely trucked? I'm with you on this. This game probably has the lowest floor out of the top games this week, but I mean, it's still Josh Allen versus CJ Stroud, that just right there off the top makes it, 50-point potential. I will say, let's talk through Bills. You mentioned Curtis Samuel. The way I saw it this week is with no Shakir, this feels like the Dalton Kincaid week. But at the same time, man, he's been blocked by Dawson Knox. Price is not right. Curtis Samuel has just been like a ghost. I hear you. The routes are going to come up for sure. The Bills are just super tricky. So right now, Hilo, if you're building the Josh Allen team, your first thought is Samuel, seems like.
I think that Samuel probably isn't best played with Josh Allen. He's probably best played alone, because he gets a little bit of upside from potential for a rushing red zone role. He gets a little bit of upside from the potential for like 3 to 4 carries here, which directly would take away from Josh Allen. And you're playing Josh Allen because he has so many paths to fantasy success. He has the mobility, and it's not a concentrated offense. So like Josh Allen can succeed on his own in this spot and not bring anybody with him. Like, yeah, it's all of his pass catchers are priced down to the point where like, even if one goes like 5 for 50 and 1, that's a good score, but that's not winning you a GPP.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I honestly, if I'm playing Josh Allen, I'm probably pairing him with Dalton Kincaid just for the off chance that like Dalton Kincaid catches 2 touchdowns and like he's a differentiator score that at a position that is shit right now that you had to have. Well, that directly benefits Josh Allen as well. But outside of that, like I just don't see a ton here.
Okay. Yeah, I think Kincaid's the call with Allen just because it solves that position.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, give me an answer for that position. I will say, yes, this offense has not been concentrated at all, but you take Shakir out. I mean, he's been their first read. I have to think those middle of field targets go to Kincaid a little bit. Jake, you have any other thoughts here on this game?
No, don't really think I have anything to add. I think I'm a little lower on Josh Allen than high-low might be, but yeah, I thought that was sharp analysis.
Nice. All right, we'll go on to another great game, and I think this game just got even better because I think Joe Flacco is going to play. It's kind of the way it seems like it's trending. Yeah, right?
Please.
This game is going to go ham with him.
Yes.
We got Jags, Colts in Jacksonville. Jags are 3-point favorites. Total is 46. Yeah, Mark, I'll throw it to you first for your reaction. I feel the same way. Like, Michael Pittman's a good play at 6K. I just want to jam in Josh Downs at 5,100, especially if we get Flacco. Brett Whitefield on the Matchup Point show brought up a good point that Jags went super zone heavy last week. They changed it up from their man scheme. Yeah, they finally changed it up. So we'll see if that's like a 1 week thing because like they were just going to get blasted by Nico if they didn't. But if they play some man this week, Josh Downs is going to lose his mind because he's not coverable in the middle of the field here.
Yeah, and that watching the tape, and again, I don't want to take too much time, but like watching the tape on the Colts, their offense looked so good with Joe Flacco under center. It was timing, it was feel, it was
the same thing as last year. Same thing as last year with him.
Yeah, dude, it looked really freaking good. And a lot of what makes head coach Shane Steichen so good is his ability to maximize the players that he has on the field. And I think, honestly, from looking at how he is managing Anthony Richardson really this year, I think he's at a loss. I don't think he knows how to use him. And that's typically something that we laud Shane Steichen over, is his ability to maximize the talent that he has. He's not allowing him to scramble. That's very clearly wasn't an Anthony Richardson thing where he has an 8% scramble rate when pressured. That's a coaching thing that they probably worked on all off season. So to me, the way that this offense was so much better functioning with Joe Flacco under center, the upside here is unlocked. And now, like, Jonathan Taylor is out. If this happens where Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson is out, we get Flacco, Josh Downs and Michael Pittman could combine for 20 targets, 24 targets, legitimately, because I don't think they're going to be running Trey Sermon into it's not a great run defense in the Jags, but it's definitely better run defense than their pass defense. Like, they're not the Ravens, but this is a good run defense. So yeah, there's upside. If we get Flacco, there's upside for 36, 40, maybe even more pass attempts. I think it's going to be concentrated on the short to intermediate areas of the field. I think they're going to try and move the ball methodically. But that's kind of, with the personnel they have, that's what this team kind of needs to do to be functioning and control the pace, control time of possession. This team ranked dead last by like a massive margin in average time of possession with Anthony Richardson at quarterback. Like, they were down at like 21 minutes and 36 seconds or something. That's ridiculous. Like, teams were having double the time of possession that the Colts were through the first 3 games. So I think this team is going to shift to more Josh Downs. And Josh Downs just wins within the first 5 yards of line of scrimmage against anybody. It doesn't matter. He's so good. So like, single entry, I'm probably starting with Joe Flacco, Josh Downs, and Michael.
Yeah,
Pittman.
let's go. Let's
Yeah.
go. I mean, the price is amazing, 5,500 first and foremost. You look through his game log, basically his last 9 starts, he's never scored fewer than 15 fantasy points. That's including last week where he played, just 3 quarters. He has 17, 25, 22. Scored 18 in the playoffs against Houston. And this offense is super concentrated. It's just Pittman and Downs is the main first reads right now. So I'm with you on Flacco. I love Brian Thomas in this game, Jake. I think he's my favorite bring back. It's small sample stuff, but against cover 3, he has just absolutely smashed cover 3. Gus Bradley runs a ton of that zone. I think he's my favorite bring back in this game, but talk to me about Jags and if you have any other thoughts on Colts in this spot.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence is in a great matchup, but if he's going to be chalky, that's pretty tough chalk to eat. I think the way to play this game is, like Hilo said, you roll a Flacco double out there and you bring it back with Brian Thomas Jr. I think the other good note in favor of Brian Thomas Jr. in regards to cover 3 is that Christian Kirk has been one of the worst wide receivers out of anybody against cover 3, a 40% reduction to his fantasy points per route run, just 1.1 yards per route run against cover 3. So that's pretty tough. Travis Etienne, he has a top 4 on paper matchup, but only 50% of inside the 10 snaps over the last 2 weeks. Tank Bigsby has just been outright better. So I'm not really into the Jags chalk outside of Brian Thomas Jr., who I just think is an outstanding play overall.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I think you can just play Flacco. You don't have to play doubles with Flacco. You can play him just with Downs and just soak up all that value. I mean, that's like 10,600, something like that. And just play Brian Thomas instead of Pittman, because I think Thomas just has a huge ceiling. And the way Doug Peterson's offense works, Evan Ingram's back this week. I'm afraid that Christian Kirk's targets get cannibalized here, because this is every time we've seen one of those guys get removed, it just unlocks the slot role. And Ingram is back this week.
Potentially. I don't think it's confirmed yet.
Not confirmed? It seemed like
he's
Peterson
listed as questionable.
Yeah, limited all week. So yeah, it's not totally all the way back. So
yeah, he's a guy that's really interesting if he does play, though.
Yeah, I agree. This is an amazing matchup. I mean, Colts just got destroyed by Cole Kmet 2 weeks ago. Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington both, had some big plays last week. Colts just leave the middle of the field open a lot. So this is a pretty good spot for him.
Yeah.
Jake, you were going to add something?
Any love for Trey Sermon? To me, he's pretty mediocre. I'm really not excited about him if Anthony Richardson plays. With Flacco, though, I think things are a little bit more interesting. The running back target rate goes up, and we know he won't get vultured by Flacco on those inside the 10 carries. Last week, I don't know if anybody caught this, but Richardson got hurt, comes up in obvious pain. Announcer says there's no way they run Richardson here, and then they immediately run QB power with Anthony Richardson.
It was so weird.
I couldn't believe it. So we wouldn't have to worry about that with Flacco. But
the like update on the box score for like the game tracker or whatever on ESPN was Anthony Richardson returns to the game. Anthony Richardson injured on the play. I was like, oh my God. So good.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So that's obviously brutal. And Steichen said it's going to be a running back by committee situation. Tyler Goodson only has 19 career touches, and Trey Sermon has been the clear number 2. I think, it's a clear split in favor of Sermon. I think he's, going to be the goal line back. I certainly like the Colts passing offense more here, but Hilo, I'm curious if you have any, anything to add on Sermon.
I think he would be a trap, to be honest. There's there's just so many good running back plays on the slate. We mentioned Derrick Henry. We're going to get to the other ones. I don't want to steal too much thunder, but even down here in this price range, I mean, we have, yes, it was like a 1 week sample. And yes, it's been since week 5 of his rookie season where DeAndre Swift has put up 100 yards and multiple touchdowns, but like that's on the table against the Panthers. We'll talk about that here shortly. There's just a lot of other plays I like, even at this value range.
Yeah, I'm with you too. And I know you don't like Jerome Ford, too much high-low, but I do like him in that range. And I kind of think Steichen just opens it up. And as much as this pains me as like a huge A-Rich fan, the Colts are 2-2. They need a win to stay in the hunt in the division and in the AFC wildcard hunt. Like, it would not surprise me if he was just thinking like Flacco's our best chance to win right now, especially with A-Rich playing so up and down and a little beat up. We might get a couple weeks of Flacco here, honestly. Prepare ourselves for that. All right, we'll keep it moving to Panthers and Bears. Talk through DeAndre Swift. Bears are getting 4. Panthers are, total's 41. Let's talk through Swift, Hilo, because like this is, you want to talk trap. This feels trappy, DeAndre Swift chalk week, but yes, he looked much better last week. They designed a bunch of screens and kind of short targets. Honestly, it was like, the best that, they've moved the ball, at least the best they have in recent weeks with that kind of style offense. And I mean, Waldron is struggling. This is kind of what this offense is right now. So I'm with you. And oh, by the way, it's like they're at home against the Panthers. Like, holy shit, it's such a good spot.
This is a Panthers team that is allowing a touchdown on 91% of opposing red zone trips this season.
Is that bad? Is that
insane?
That seems kind of bad.
100% on the road. Like, you can't. That's really bad. Yeah. I mean, like. Ejiro Evero, yeah, that's how you say his name. The defensive coordinator for the Panthers is a pretty good defensive mind, but he's kind of in the Jonathan Gannon camp right now, where he has to overcome so much based on his defensive personnel. Jonathan Gannon uses a lot of quarters. He uses a lot of too high to try and do that. He tries to keep the play in front of him and force teams to kind of march the field. Evero just hasn't figured it out just yet. He plays a ton of cover 3. And cover 3 is kind of like your like middle ground to be competent versus the pass and versus the run. You have 3 linebackers in the box, so you have 7 bodies against the run. But he's just not doing it yet. And it might take time, and he might experience like a second half of the season Jonathan Gannon turnaround from last year. But they're not there yet. So this team needs a lot of coaching. Evero's a good defensive mind, but they're not there, like I said. So yeah, I mean, like if Swift is going to see, he saw his highest snap rate of the season last weekend. Yep. If he's going to see like 16 to 18 carries with 4 or 5 targets, like that is playable at 5,700 against the Panthers. And like I said, like he's been a professional athlete. This is his 6th season. You have to go all the way back to week 5 of his rookie year in 2020 to see 100 yards on the ground and multiple scores. But like, it kind of feels like that's within the range of outcomes this week.
Yeah, it's tricky, Jake. What do you think about Swift, Bears, and Panthers here, man?
I mean, I'm pretty torn on Swift because I think all the points Hilo made are fantastic and spot on, but 33% snap share inside the 10, like that's a major concern. He could absolutely lose those goal line carries, and it is hard to see him, hitting that ceiling outcome. He had a 30% target share last week, which was awesome. But even with that and 12 carries, if he isn't getting any touchdowns, it is harder to see that ceiling outcome. I'm still kind of figuring it out with Swift, to be honest. Beyond him, I think on the Panthers side, I'm really not interested in any stacks. It's just Deontay Johnson and Chuba Hubbard, who are both seeing volume that's significantly better than their price tag. I mean, Deontay Johnson should be 7,200, even in a bad matchup. I mean, he's, wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6 right now by usage. So, he's clearly undervalued. And then, Chuba, 4th most expected fantasy points with Andy Dalton under center over the last 2 weeks. He's running a ton of routes when they're trailing, which is a pretty big note considering, Carolina are dogs here. And the Bears are a slightly favorable schedule adjusted matchup. So Hubbard, I think, is maybe a slightly better option than Deontay, but they're both solid. I have a little bit of interest in Caleb Williams. To me, he feels pretty similar to Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence in the sense that, he hasn't been playing well this year, but he has a great matchup. The most encouraging note, I think, with Caleb Williams is that his only decent fantasy game this year came against a Colts team that generated pressure at a pitifully low 22% rate in that game. Carolina has the 2nd lowest pressure rate over expectation this season. So Caleb Williams, as Brett Whitefield likes to say, will be able to do his weird little pirouette stuff in the pocket, should have time to throw. And if you're looking for someone to pair it with, I think we like Keenan Allen the most. DJ Moore also viable. Odunze seemed to fall a bit behind in the target pecking order once Keenan came back last week. It's thin. It's something I'd only roll out, if I'm 150 maxing on maybe 5 teams. But I do think he's in play and should be getting talked up a little bit more on a slate where, like I said, Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson are chalk in similar spots.
I just got to say, DeAndre Swift, 30% target share when you have DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Romo Dunze. Like, what are we doing, man? What the hell are we doing? I want to hype up Chuba a little bit. I think he's my favorite running back play on the slate for the price. Snaps have come up 4 straight games, 55%, 59%, 60. He was up at 73% last week. I have a lot of respect for Bears secondary and their pass rush, but this is not a very good run defense right now. And this has been Canales' guy last couple weeks. And, Jake, you brought up the insane XFP. He's been delivering back-to-back games of 20 or more fantasy points. I just think he's a really, really strong play this week. And, Mark, you've been saying it all show. That running back is amazing this week. We've had some really good running back weeks. This might be the best one, honestly. But, man, I love Hubbard this week for sure. Mark, you got anything else?
Yeah, it is worth noting before we move on from this game that Cole Kmet over the last season and a half has been the Bears' most productive pass catcher against zone. And we know that the Panthers are going to run a ton of zone. So I don't think that you have to pair him with this quarterback, but Caleb Williams and Cole Kmet make a lot of sense here.
Like that. Yeah, especially with a little bit of touchdown equity that Kmet has. He gets, red zone, end zone stuff. All right. Dolphins and Patriots will breeze through this one. Yeah.
I have nothing other than the Achane rushing under on this game. That was my only note.
Yeah. Raheem Mostert will be back this week. He had some sort of like punctured lung issue. I think he'll be back. Yeah. Snoop Huntley gets some design stuff. God, man, this is brutal. This game. I really don't have much. I mean, you can't play Tyreek. It's 76. Can't play Waddle. He's still overpriced. And yeah, Jake, you've been, you and I think Ryan too are jamming Achane unders, right?
Yeah. I think his rushing prop when I checked last night was 53.5. Tyler Huntley stole, 25%, 21% of design carries last week. It seems like even if Mostert doesn't play, they still want to get, Jeff Wilson and Jalen Wright involved. So yeah, it's gross. New England's a major pass funnel too. So I think that's the best note you can have from this game is to bet Achane unders and to turn it off.
yeah, just ignore this game. Mark, you got anything? I really don't have anything from Patriots side either.
Nope.
Yeah.
Okay. There's one potential maybe.
Okay. Give it to
Ramondre Stevenson has fumbled in every game this season. So there was coach speak about potentially getting Antonio Gibson more involved. I don't know, man. I don't see it, but that's at least worth mention for the MME bros in the room. Maybe you take some shots on Antonio Gibson.
Yeah, it's fair. He's such a mid runner. God, he's mid.
Oh yeah.
But it's hard to see the goal line carries there too. But if they're done with Ramondre, maybe, right?
Well, we know the volume is going to be great. Patriots are going to be extremely run heavy in this spot for sure. But yeah, good shout. All right, well, let's talk about a better game. Please, Cardinals and 49ers, huge total. It's up at 50, 7.5. Niners getting 7.5 here. Mark, I'll toss it to you first. I liked your thought. Basically, Jordan Mason and Derrick Henry are very similar plays. Have a little more faith in the Ravens and their run game and just what they're able to get to right now. I mean, obviously, Mason's just been incredible. This is such a good spot. Let's talk through this game here, man. What are you seeing from 49ers Cardinals?
The first realization is that with what the hell? I'm forgetting his name now. The quarterback. Jesus, dude. It's been a long day. With Brock Purdy under center for the 49ers, they have gone over 30 points in 16 now of 28 games since he took over the starting quarterback. I believe it is 7 of those misses were without Deebo Samuel. So as Deebo Samuel is back, that's a high rate of success for this offense when they have Deebo Samuel on the field. So do we expect the 49ers to fail against the Cardinals, who we just got done saying do not have a lot of talent on the defensive side? Probably not. So in my opinion, we need to account for the 49ers in some fashion on our rosters this week. I think it's plenty fine. This is probably the most I've liked Jordan Mason out of all, I guess, since week one. So this is his best setup since week one. He's been chalking in every slate of the season, but this is probably his best setup because what is he? He's a yardage and touchdown back who has seen 3 targets, 1 target, 1 target, and 1 target. So He needs yards. He's doing that. He's gone over 100 yards in each of the last 2 games, but he needs the touchdowns. So very similar to Derrick Henry. That was Jake's shout earlier. Very, very similar play on paper. But I actually like Jordan Mason a little bit better than Derrick Henry this week because we have this high success rate of the 49ers scoring points. The Ravens have done that as well over the last 2 weeks, but like this is a multi-year thing for the 49ers. I think it's fine to play. It's fine to play Jordan Mason. Not a lot of people are going to play both of those guys because we're kind of ingrained in the current state of the league to not pay up at running back. So to do so twice is going to be highly contrarian. I think there's other guys that you can pair. You can play like George Kittle is probably going to be the lowest ownership of the primary skill position players on the 49ers. I played him last week in my Millie Sweat and it didn't pan out, but
he got hurt. He got hurt, man.
He came back. Yeah, he had a boo-boo. I was like, you can't keep this man out, dude. He had a boo-boo, a slight boo-boo before the halftime. But he came back. Yeah, I was like checking the status update, like, where's Kittle? And he's like, he returned to the field with his helmet. I was like, yes. And then he had one more target after that.
They just smoked him, man. I think Ayuk is going to be the lowest owned of these 49er guys, and I love him as a contrarian play this week. Like the big game's coming, man. Massively underperformed by XFP by I think a little more than 5 fantasy points per game. His assless still looks great. And this is just a smash spot. I mean, Cardinals are allowing a receiver to get open or wide open on 68% of routes. It's by far the highest rate in the league. I just think this feels like an Ayuk get right spot. I know he's in the doghouse. He's still really good at the game, man. And like, he has 6 for 120 and a touchdown well within his range this week. And I have not been interested in Ayuk for a month. This feels like the spot. This kind of feels like the spot here, especially with everybody jamming, and for right reasons, jamming Debo. I really like Ayuk. Jake, what do you think about Cardinals side? I don't know what that game plan was last week. I don't know why we're going and playing Washington and throwing it 22 times. It's just so, you've been all over that, Mark. Just so stupid. We're going to get Kyler pushed this week, right? Like he's got Trey McBride back. We're going to get Kyler pushed in this spot. Niners probably going to put up another 30-point game.
Yeah, it's a pretty brutal matchup for Arizona. I'm not particularly excited to play Kyler. The one encouraging note that I did have was for Trey McBride, and I think part of this is just because the position is so bad and no one really wants to play McBride this week. 49ers have the 7th highest pressure rate this season. McBride has a 37% target share this year when his quarterback is pressured. That's easily the highest rate of any tight end, by far the highest rate on the Cardinals. The on-paper matchup isn't great, but what if he just gets peppered with targets as Kyler's safety valve because he's under pressure on 45% of his dropbacks? That's kind of the argument there. Beyond him, I mean, you're obviously not playing James Conner really in this spot. I don't see a way he gets you there. I couldn't find, really any encouraging matchup notes for Marvin Harrison Jr., but he's a tremendous talent, so you could argue for him on that basis. But I think if I'm rolling out a Purdy stack and I need a run back, it's McBride. And that's about it. And I think I would rather skip Kittle if I were to skip anybody in like a 49ers double, just because Dr. Edwin Porras, hinted that he thinks he'll be limited this week dealing with that rib injury. But Kittle's played for years with like a torn labrum. He's a stud. So the ribs might not slow him down if they don't slow anyone down, right?
He's just a machine. He does not care. He's going to play.
The biggest thing for McBride just popped up in the chat. I was waiting to say is tracking the status of Fred Warner. Fred Warner was DNP limited. He's listed as questionable. Yes, the 49ers get massive pressure, but Fred Warner has the best range of any linebacker in coverage in the league, even at this stage in his career. He's just so good. He had the pick last week too. Pick for a touchdown. That bastard. Yeah, he's what ruined that game environment. Anyway, yeah. So. If Fred Warner is out, that significantly boosts the individual matchup for Trey McBride.
Yeah, Fred Warner's the best cover linebacker on tight ends in the league, so would be a huge boost for him for sure. I don't really have a whole lot else. I'm not playing these ancillary pieces like Greg Dortch and Michael Wilson. I will say I I think I'm a little interested in Kyler just because no one wants to play him. He still has that rushing upside. He's going to be like 2%, and I do like McBride, especially if Fred Warner's out, and just bring it back with one of these Niners for sure. I do have a little bit more interest in Kyler. All right, Raiders Broncos. This game is another kind of atrocious one, like Dolphins Patriots. A little better pieces though. I think better individual talent on both sides. Broncos at home getting 3, totals 36. Mark, I'll throw it to you first. Let's talk through Broncos side. I think they're a little more straightforward. It's really just Javonte and Cortland Sutton. Javonte got a little bit of a bump last week with Tyler Bidet going out. He's on the IR now, and Jaleel McLaughlin's been off to a slow start. Like, if there were any spot to play Javonte, it'd be at home against the Raiders. Terrible run defense. He's 5,200. What's your vibe on Javonte here?
This feels like a trap to me. Again, if I'm playing a piece from this game, it's going to be the Broncos defense. This team is playing really, really good football defensively. They're leading the league in blitz rate.
And they're getting home too with those blitzes.
They're getting home. Yeah. I mean, 5 sacks, 7 sacks in each of the last 2 weeks. And these were not against scrubs. This was against Aaron Rodgers, who doesn't take sacks. So yeah, I mean, they allowed 9 points to the Jets. They allowed 7 points to Tampa Bay. They played Pitt to a 16 or a 13-6 game the week before that. This team is schematically looks really, really fun. They're playing a lot of man because they can just island up and take away your best option through the air, which is like, do we see a shadow? Is it going to be on Jacoby? Probably not.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about. I talked about this with Brett last night. I was like, man, I don't know if they are going to identify Jacoby as like, okay, we got to take him out. Like, this might be the first week Surtain actually just plays sides,
Yeah. I think that's sharp. And then you have like all the offensive line struggles from the Raiders. So like the pressure differential between the Denver defensive line and the Raiders offensive line is something we're looking for when we're picking out defenses.
Yeah, I think Colton Miller is going to play. He's been a little beat up. He's their best lineman, but Raiders have certainly not been good up front. And like the Broncos D shout, I think they're going to be a mega chalk though. I mean, they just make so much sense at this price on DK. Jake, you got any other thoughts on Broncos before we throw it to the Raiders? And man, Trey Tucker week. I think it's looking like Trey Tucker week at 4,100. He's a pretty interesting play.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else on the Broncos. On the Raiders side, I mean, Alexander Mattison is at least worth talking about, but I feel, lowest implied team total on the slate here against a brutal defensive matchup. I mean, sure, Denver's softer on the ground, but I think this is pretty thin. Trey Tucker, though, does look like a pretty great play. Averaged 3.3 yards per out run against cover 1 and another 100% boost to his yards per out run against man coverage. Denver ranks top 3 in both cover 1 and man coverage. You guys mentioned Patrick Surtain probably plays sides. If he is going to shadow anyone, it will be Jacoby Myers. Obviously, they're not worried about Trey Tucker killing them. So that's another positive note. The on-paper matchup isn't great, but, the price is right. The volume should be there. So I'm fine with Tucker as a one-off. Plus, I'm contractually obligated to mention that he went to the University of Cincinnati. So that's another reason to like him. That's pretty much the only guy I'm interested in on the Raiders side of this game.
Yeah, you gotta rep the Bearcats. There's not a lot of value on this slate. I think Trey Tucker is pretty clearly the best value, at least on my board. I don't really have much else here. We're talking trap running backs. Alexander Mattison certainly feels trappy, but gosh, he's gonna get a lot. He's gonna get a lot, man.
A lot of 2-yard gains.
That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's
the XFP is going to be great. The XFP will be great.
It's so over. Scott was like pretty excited about him, and I spent like half my afternoon talking him off the ledge and making that blurb worse and worse.
That's a good friend. Good friend.
Yeah, and like Hilo said, it's a great running back slate. There's no reason to get cute with a guy like Madison. They're just better
if he were like 4,700, like. I could get behind it, but he's in the mid fives on a good slate.
Yeah. Why would you play Madison over like Tyrone Tracy? If you're going cheap, like let's go cheap.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
just completely
exactly.
bargain bin that shit.
Yeah.
Let's talk through it then. Giants, Seahawks. I got to think they play a little Eric Gray, right? High-low, but I mean,
Probably,
Tyrone
yeah.
Tracy, dynamic, will play in the passing game. They'll play some Eric Gray, but they're going to give Tracy a legitimate chance here. He's 4,300. Where do you think ownership shakes out with him? He's
It
tricky.
depends on some of these other injury situations. If like nothing else happens that we weren't expecting between now and Sunday morning, it's probably going to be, I would say, in the low 20s to mid 20s, probably.
Okay.
Just
he's
because
he's a really good play if it's 20-ish, I think.
Yeah, well, maybe not. The Giants are going to have a really, really hard time moving the football.
Yeah.
The Seattle defense, although they got absolutely eviscerated by Detroit on Monday night, that's what's in everybody's mind, not the fact that like this team is playing some good football on the defensive side.
Well, and they're going to get all of their defensive linemen back. Leonard Williams will
Yeah.
be back in this spot. I think Boy Mafe is going to play, so they'll get their dudes back. Really, Leonard Williams is the big one. He's been awesome this year.
Yeah, they were extremely banged up on the defense. They had 3 or 4, I think it was 3 of the 4 defensive linemen were out against the Lions. Yeah. So, and some of those were surprises too. They came in like questionable, not doubtful. So yeah, I think this is a spot where it's okay to go to Tyrone Tracy if the like reward is getting you like Jamar Chase with Derrick Henry, or like something that is not going to be utilized a lot. If the reward is like you jam in a bunch of other like guys around 6,200, like it's not really worth it. Because there are so many paths to failure. Like this Giants team could just struggle to move the football. They have no Malik Neighbors. Yeah, like they have no Malik Neighbors. Like you're going to base your game plan probably around Wan'Dale Robinson, who works 4 yards down the field. So that's what they're going to have to do. And that's what Seattle wants them to have to do, is march the field, because they play better defense when they are playing with a lead.
Yeah, nice. I just think Tracy has a pretty decent floor though, Jake. Like he is easily second on the team in the backfield in terms of routes, 34 routes, 6 targets this year. We know he could be a factor in the pass game. I think the floor is decent. But I think the scariest thing here is obviously the high-lows point that Daniel Jones can't throw it more than 20 yards down the field, and like they don't have anybody to throw down the field to now. Interesting game though. What do you think about Tracy? And flip it over to Seahawks. Ken Walker's an awesome play at 6,800. I'm talking great running back slate. I think Walker's a really, really strong play. This Giants run defense stinks.
Yeah. When it comes to Tracy, I definitely like him. I'm pretty much exactly in line with Hilo here, where if you're playing Tracy, it's to get up to the guys that you really, really want, something unique and expensive, like a Derrick Henry, Jamar Chase, or playing some of the really expensive running backs that we really like. Before I get to Ken Walker, I just wanted to mention these Giants wide receivers. Obviously, both Darius Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson are popping in every set of projections because the Giants have vacated about 35% of their targets here. Robinson's, a borderline lock for a 30% or higher target share. The problem is that his receptions are basically the least valuable in the NFL. He would need 23 targets to go over 100 air yards at his average depth of target, which is just absolutely insane.
It could happen.
So I really don't see. Maybe in this game. The problem is he's going to get more defensive attention without Neighbors. Neighbors kind of opens up the whole offense for Wan'Dale to work underneath.
And it's a literal worst possible matchup for Wan'Dale. Like literal worst possible. Like
it's
Devin
not much better for Darius. Yeah, it's not much better for Slayton either.
Exactly.
Seattle has not given up much deep. Second fewest deep targets, second fewest deep yards. Not really great for either wide receiver. I guess I'm fine if you just really need them to fill in, but especially Wan'Dale, I'm not excited to play in GPPs. Kenneth Walker, we've already talked about these top running back plays in Derrick Henry and Jordan Mason. To me, Kenneth Walker is right there in the next tier below those guys as just a fantastic play. 800 too cheap. He looks amazing on film. He's facing a Giants defense that has allowed the most yards after contact per attempt, and he's a 6-point favorite. You could not dream of a better spot. New York could just not show up at all, and he could get absolutely fed. It should be awesome.
Yeah, and I think projections across the industry are just a little low on him, honestly, because he's going to get the bell cow roll this week. Last week it was 60 to 40. Zach Charbonnet is a fine player, but he is nowhere close to the echelon that Walker is. So I fully expect this to be week one, bell cow Walker getting nearly like 75% of the snaps. Full go this week off the injury report. Ken Walker's just an awesome play. We got to talk DK Metcalf, though. He's kind of off to like the start AJ Brown had last year, Mark. Really bad week one against Pat Surtain, but he has just lost his mind. 3 straight games over 100 yards. It's an amazing spot. Giants secondary just has no chance at covering DK. He's 7K. I think he's a pretty interesting tournament play, especially, there's going to be some chalk. We'll talk through Jaden Reed here in a second, but Debo is going to be chalky. Jaden Reed will be chalky. I think he's going to pull some ownership off of DK.
Yeah, and I think the most lineups, I'll say it like this, most lineups in play this week will have somebody in this 7K-ish range because we don't have the salary to pay up for the Jamar Chases. We don't have the salary to mess around with the upper echelon. Like we don't have CeeDee Lamb on this slate. We're not playing Tyreek Hill. So that kind of leaves a high emphasis on these guys around 7K. That's probably why we're seeing a lot of ownership on Debo. But like you said, of those guys, it's probably DK that is going to see the lowest. But when we're thinking through what that does is you're basically just making a 1-for-1 pivot. The rest of your roster is going to be structured almost the same as a lot of the rosters in play this week. So I like him less than you would think on the surface. And part of what goes into that is like Kenneth Walker is not really projecting for unfathomable ownership right now. So you're not even getting that much like leverage off of. Like I'd rather just play Kenneth Walker, I think. Because it gets you a little bit more unique roster construction. That's kind of where I'm at. And I still have a lot to work through as far as like the inner workings of the slate, but that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. I wish Seahawks defense was a little cheaper, but I just want to jam Walker and Seahawks D in this game. I think Giants just get smoked without Neighbors. Yeah. Jake, you have anything else on the Seattle side beyond that? I mean, JSN's role has just been like all over the place, an absolute roller coaster ride. Schematically, it's a better matchup for Metcalf and Lockett to that point. But any other thoughts here?
Yeah, I really don't have much to add. Giants have really funneled volume outside. So pretty brutal matchup for JSN, much better for Lockett and DK. Giants have also been terrible against wide receiver ones. So certainly, favorable matchups for both those guys. I think if you are going to roll out like a Geno double stack, it's, pretty obviously Lockett and DK over JSN this week.
Yeah, nice. We are every single week contractually obligated to mention Geno Smith as a good tournament play. I'm a little concerned about
touchdowns are coming. I swear.
I swear.
I swear. Trust me, bro.
One in every game. We'll eventually get 2. He is a massive progression candidate, that's for sure. But I don't know if I exactly see it in this spot. We need Giants to push, and I don't know if they will. All right, great game here. Packers and Rams to close us out. Packers are 3-point favorites. Totals 48.5. Mark, you're the resident Packer. Romeo Doubs is out. He has a personal issue. Christian Watson has a high ankle sprain. I mean, everybody and their mother is going to play Dontavian Wicks at 5K.
Yeah.
What's your vibe here on Packers, and how are you seeing this week play out for this Jordan Love team? He's fully back, man. Looked great in the second half last week.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack here, honestly. First of all, MME Bros should have Malik Heath's name written in pen. We need to have exposure if we're MMEing on Malik Heath. He should be the most natural fill-in for Romeo Doubs' role. He's a 6'2" wide receiver. He is more inclined to run the X-type wide receiver routes that Romeo Doubs was. So now it's just a matter of touchdown variance, and that could happen at any point. Jaden Reed, very good play. Dontavian Wicks, we've all seen the metrics. I'm not going to regurgitate them here. Fantastic play on paper. But all of that said, these are 2 head coaches that I mentioned kind of in the same vein as our discussion of they kind of need to be pushed when we were talking about Zach Taylor in Matt LaFleur and Sean McVay. We look at like the inner workings of these teams right now. How is McVay trying to win? He's trying to stay ahead of the sticks, and he is just emphasizing the hell out of his running back. So we're seeing Kyron be the point of emphasis of the offense, and that also means that they don't really have anybody on the field that can really drive a game environment. the other side, like Matt LaFleur, we have not seen how Matt LaFleur is going to behave in a normal game environment yet this season. We saw it last year, and last year it was like, we're going to grind. We're going to have a low pace of play. We're going to grind out some games. We're going to utilize short area passing, and then we're going to hit you when you're not expecting it. So like in week 1, they were in a shootout and playing from behind the entire game against Philadelphia on that Friday night game. Weeks 2 and 3, they were without Jordan Love. And then week 4, they were down 28-0 halfway through the second quarter. So we haven't seen a normal game. So I really like Josh Jacobs in this spot. Like, yes, Emmanuel Wilson is going to be involved, but if this team is playing a game environment that they want to play, and we talked about LaFleur and McVay are more reactive. They're not going to be pushing things on their own. And all the field is just buying into this Green Bay passing game. Like, I think there is a clear path to 30, 32 team carries. So how many does Emmanuel Wilson get? Maybe, 6 to 8 of those. So there's a path to like 25 running back opportunities here for Josh Jacobs. Against a team that is giving up the second most yards per game and can't stop opposing teams in the red zone. So Josh Jacobs, we talk about touchdown variance. He hasn't scored this year.
Yeah.
He fumbled entering the one, and he got stonewalled on his only goal line carry. But he's ranked 6th in the league in red zone touches. So like this all points to me to like Josh Jacobs, great leverage play. He changes up how we expect the field to be building their rosters. And he's awesome leverage off of the pass catchers here.
Yeah, love that shout. That's a really sharp call, Mark. Rams have already given up 5 touchdowns on the ground too. So this is the get right spot here for Jacobs, just attached to this offense.
Yeah.
Jake, let's talk through the receivers here real quick, because Mark made a great call there on Jacobs. All these guys are I think you can make a case for being too cheap. Tucker Kraft, no Luke Musgrave this week. He's out with an injury. It didn't matter in the first place, though. Kraft usurped Musgrave last week, 84% route share. He's just 3,500. Wicks is 5K. Jaden Reed, it's Jaden Reed week every week with Jordan Love in the lineup. He's 6,500. What's your vibe here on Packers pass game? Mark made the leverage point on Jacobs. If you're playing Love, how are you seeing it?
Yeah, I mean, these love stacks are really tricky because Wicks, Reed, Kraft are all going to be among the most popular players of the slate. So that's kind of my biggest holdup, is that Jordan Love double stacks are going to be the most popular double stacks. Jordan Love triple stacks will be the most popular triple stacks. So, that makes it pretty tough. If you're arguing about these guys as a one-off, I think, Dontavian Wicks is pretty clearly my favorite. Los Angeles is a massive outside funnel. They've given up the most fantasy points per game to outside wide receivers, but the second fewest to slot wide receivers. Now, that's obviously not to say that, Jaden Reed is a bad play. He's amazing. He's basically doubling his fantasy point expectation with actual fantasy points. I mean, he's an incredible player. But yeah, I would go with Wicks if I wanted to grab a one-off passing option from this game. And when it comes to love stacks, I mean, I think Malik Heath is going to be the only way you can get a piece that's sub 20%. I mean, do you have anything to add there, Mark?
No, I think Malik and Josh Jacobs are the most interesting pieces. If I'm playing Love, I would almost want Malik Heath to be on the roster just for some level of differentiation and like mix and match after that. But when we get this situation where we want to play all of these guys, how likely is it going to be that multiple GPP winning scores come out of this game playing a team where like they can't push the envelope? Who's gonna push the envelope from the Rams? Is it Tutu Atwell? Like, come on. So like they're not going to push the envelope, and they're playing for a coach who would prefer to like just control a game environment instead of push the envelope. So I just think there's far more paths to failure for this Green Bay passing game than the field is probably going to realize here.
Yeah, I will say I think this total is a little high. I think 48.5 is pretty strong for this game. So if you have a strong lean, I do kind of favor the under here. To your point, Mark, on Rams. I mean, last 3 weeks they have had a pass rate under expectation at 7%, -7%, -13%, and last week was back at -7%. So, they are certainly going to play slow, grind it out with Kyron. We really, for this game to go off, we need Packers to hit a ceiling. I will say Jordan Whittington is a pretty strong play though. 4,600. He is going to be chalky. 2 weeks ago was a part-time player, got the full-time role last week, 8 targets. Tutu Atwell has led the team or tied for the team league in first read targets in 3 straight games. McVay does love him, but Whittington is kind of in that cup motion role. But everybody's kind of on that at this point.
Yeah. I called for it 2 weeks ago and then he did nothing. And then I got off of it last week and it was like, okay, now he's in it. Cool, man. It's
so frustrating to be 2 weeks early like that. It's nature of the beast, though. You play DFS as long as you and I have. I mean, you're going to happen. That's going to happen a million times. But yeah, Whittington's going to be 20% easily this week. Everybody's looking for value, and he is popping. I think that'll do it, guys. Great show. A lot of great calls here in about the last hour. Stick around in about a little less than 20 minutes. Jake and Ryan Heath are going to be going live for the drafter party, ripping some underdog drafts, talking through strategy for this week. I would imagine this game and Jaden Reed are going to be a major emphasis point. So if you're playing on underdog, this week, make sure you're checking out Ryan and Jake's show. Good stuff, guys. For Jake, for Mark, I'm Graham. We'll see you guys at the top of the leaderboards this week.
What?
Why are you shaking your head? You're welcome.